video, I'll show you how to grout and finish off a mosaic flower pot. We'll go through the process of prepping the flower pot, grouting, and sealing the inside and out. There's nothing like creating mosaic art for the great outdoors. Let's get to it. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Julie. And on this channel, we discuss tips, tricks, materials, adhesives, tools, and specific mosaic projects like the one today, all to shorten your learning curve when it comes to creating mosaic art. So if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, please consider subscribing. Today's video is part 2 in a 2-part series. In part 1, I discussed how to select a terracotta pot, what the acceptable materials are for mosaic flower pots, the optimal size of your tessera, color choices, and tiling. It's an information-packed video, so I'll put a link here in the description card so you can check it out. The flower pot that I created in part 1 of this series has been waiting here patiently for about 4 days to be grouted. Generally, you want to wait at least 1 day before grouting to give your thin set time to dry and cure. There's a little prep involved in getting your flower pot ready for grouting because there are certain areas of the flower pot that you may not want to have grout on them. Once grout gets onto the porous surface, it's very difficult to get it off the surface, and you won't be able to get it out of the surface. And terracotta is a porous surface. So to start off, I don't like to have any grout on the bottom of my flower pots. Besides the fact that I don't like it to look messy, yes, I know it's going to be sitting on the ground and nobody's going to see it. I also want to make sure that the drainage hole in the flower pot remains completely open once the flower pot is in use with a plant. If you don't mind getting a little bit of grout on your untiled areas, then you can skip to the grouting chapter of this video. I find that doing this step also helps make sure that the bottom of the flower pot is actually sitting on the terracotta pot and not grout, and it also means that the terracotta pot will remain level once it's in use. The first thing that I do is tape off the bottom and put tape through the drainage hole. By covering up the bottom, this allows the drainage hole to remain clear and completely open so that grout doesn't clog it up. And it also allows the hole to remain open in case I need to lift the pot up either with my finger or a craft stick. Next, I take some plastic. I used a cut-up bag from a big box store, and I taped it to the inside of the pot using painter's tape. This will allow me to put my grout-covered hands inside the pot while grouting, which really helps for leverage, and it'll keep the inside clean. You'll want to check over the pot one last time to make sure all areas that you don't want grouted are securely covered, whether it's with the plastic bag or the painter's tape. I always use fortified grout or fortified mortar as my grout. If you just have regular grout, instead of adding water, you can add latex, which is a liquid. It's easily found at hardware stores, and I'll also put a link down below. And you mix it up the same way you would if you were just mixing up your regular grout. And this is going to give a lot of flexibility to your grout. It's going to allow the grout to be stronger as well as keep the color consistent. It's definitely a plus when grouting an item that's going to go outdoors in the harsh changing elements. And as we discussed in part 1 of this video, you'll want to move your flower pot indoors for harsher weather conditions like freeze, thaw, and hurricanes. I'll include a list of all the items I'm using in today's video down in the description. You can check them out and read up and get familiar with them. Okay, I've mixed up my grout and I'm ready to go. If you'd like to see how I mix up small batches of grout, I'll put a link here in the description card and you can check it out. So when I start grouting a flower pot, I like to work from the bottom down. I just put my finger in the drainage hole for leverage, just spoon a little bit on, and I work in sections. So I make sure, aside from the rim, I mean the rim's going to get hit with a little bit of grout as you're working, but I just sort of, between the bottom and the sides, I just work in sections and then I move along to the next. The flower pot is now grouted and I'll let it sit here for about 10 minutes before I start cleaning it off. I do not like to bring more moisture to the flower pot during the cleaning off process. So I am part of the dry paper towel crew. and it comes off so easily anyways with a dry paper towel. So I just do the same motion that I did to get the grout on. I go backwards, forwards, clockwise, counterclockwise. When grouting, this is definitely a process where you don't grout it and then walk away for an hour, 2 hours, couple days. This is definitely a process where you need to allocate the time for the grouting and the cleaning off. And you see why it's so important to fill the inside, because certainly during the grouting process, I want to have a really firm hold because I am going over this a little vigorously and I am able to hold on to that rim with my hand in the pot. Now, if you do wait too long and things start to dry, then you can certainly bring in a damp sponge to help sort of reinvigorate the grout to get it to a point where you can clean it off. But as long as you are hanging out with your mosaic item, your flower pot, whatever, and you don't wait too long to do the grouting, it comes off very easily. So as you're going around, you just want to make sure that all of the edges of your tile are exposed. And if you're having a little bit of a problem exposing an edge, you can always get a toothpick and just sort of gently disturb the grout that's on top of your tiled piece. You don't want to dig in too much, but just a little bit to get it started. And I'm just going around making sure that all of my edges of my tile are exposed. Should you dig out too much, you can just go right back in and add more grout. That's why it's good not to throw your grout away when you're done. Just keep it to the side. You can cover it. And you can expose as much or as little of the glass gems at the top. Sometimes I go a little deeper with exposing more of the grout in between, and sometimes I don't. It depends on what I feel like for the piece. I'm not going to go too crazy initially, and then I'll just see. The glass gems are definitely imperfect, so some are bigger than others. Sometimes if you want them to look a little more uniform, you can expose all of the smaller size and leave a little more of the bigger size grouted, and it might give the illusion that they're a little more closer in size. But I like the look of small with the big. And then I'm just gonna go around the bottom. Not so worried about the blue tape, just worried about making sure that the grout is nice and smooth should it come close to the bottom. I find that a toothpick works better at this point than the steel picks. I'm afraid that I'm gonna take too much out. The toothpicks are a little more forgiving, a little gentler. Now's the time to remove the tape and plastic. And we have to be careful because you can see that some of the tape is probably underneath the grout. So I like to have a straight razor blade. Instead of pulling any tape that may be caught under the grout, I will razor blade it. And just, if there's any blue tape under the grout, it's going to stay there. It's just a process of finding the last piece you put on. Okay, and you don't want to pull too hard as you're pulling around the edge where the tape meets the grout. You don't want to pull too hard in case it's dried enough that it's staying under. I did take my gloves off. Remember, grout is super drying. It's cement based. So when I'm done here, I will clean my hands off and I'll put some lotion on just because it is so drying. And for the inside, I'm going to pull. This one's a little more tricky. All right, that's looking good. And we're trying to keep the grout from going inside, just because I like for it to look clean on the inside and the outside. That's just me. If you don't care, you can, like I said, skip this step. Okay, so the inside looks really good. Nice rim. Clean rim, and the bottom nice and clean so that when the pot sits on the table or the ground, it's going to be sitting on the actual terracotta pot and not grout. The flower pot is grouted, it's cleaned off, and now it's going to sit here for about an hour. I'll check it periodically to make sure a grout haze has not formed. The next step is to seal the grout, but you'll want to wait at least 3 days to allow the grout to fully cure. It's been 3 days and I have checked my grout to make sure it's not cracked or chipped. Sealing your mosaic is the final step in this process, and it's so crucial because this item is going to be in the outdoors. Now, I don't seal my artwork that's going to remain indoors. I only seal my grout that will be outdoors in changing weather environments and especially subjected to direct moisture like this flower pot. Adding a sealant to your grout will prevent it from absorbing moisture, stains, mold, and mildew. In other words, sealing your grout will prolong the look and life of your mosaic. You would never apply a grout sealer to unglazed tiles or natural stone. Those materials are porous and would absorb the sealant, and there would be no way to get it off. This is only if your tile pieces are ceramic or glass. So the grout sealer will basically slide off of your tile pieces, although you'll still want to clean off your tile pieces with a rag or dry paper towel. You don't have to become a pro about grout sealer, but let's just talk about it for a minute. There are 2 types of grout sealer: penetrating and membrane forming. Think of penetrating sealer as just that. It penetrates the grout because grout is porous. It absorbs the sealer and keeps moisture out. The membrane forming option creates a coating on the grout surface that does not allow for water penetration. This sealer could trap moisture, which would not allow it to evaporate, and then you would develop mold and mildew issues. So we're going to go with a penetrating sealer today. Sealing your grout is easy, it just takes time and can be a little tedious. If you can paint lines, you can paint sealer. The less grout lines you have, the quicker your sealing will go. For a small project like this, you can use an old paintbrush, or like what I'm going to use, just a sponge brush. Okay, you want to wear gloves for this process. I'm just using a plastic disposable cup. And I'm going to seal the inside of the pot first and then flip it over and work on the outside. Okay, you want to make sure that you are painting on a nice, even, smooth coat. I can see that the terracotta is just drinking it up. This is a multi-step process. I will do 2 coats of this in the same exact way each time, but you'll want to read the instructions on your bottle to see, because some manufacturers have different instructions. And I will have to go back over and clean off the tile. This is not a process that you want to start and then come back to later. This is much like grouting, this is what you're doing at that moment. So you just want to block off a little bit of time. Underneath my white paper that I'm working on, I've got plastic. So you just want to make sure that whatever you're working on, whatever surface you're working on, that you protect it. And you see how easy this is with a sponge brush. And I'm just quickly going to go over all the tile pieces. It's important when you're applying sealer that you make sure to thoroughly cover all the joints, which is where the tile and the grout meet. Now, obviously you're at an advantage with using a glazed surface or a glass surface because it doesn't soak in like it does with the porous terracotta pot. Like, I can already see it's looking dry over here. Like, it is definitely soaking in. There is a little bit of a fume that comes off of the sealer, so you want to be in a well-ventilated area. I've got a fan going, I've got the air conditioner going, so I'm not really smelling it, but you just want to be aware. Okay, I don't know if you can see it, but it's already starting to soak in, and it's only been about, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. Wow, it's really, look how quickly this is now going. So for the instructions on the bottle I purchased, it says to do 2 coats. So I'm going to let it sit here for about 5 to 15 minutes, and then I'm going to go through the process again and give everything a second coat in the exact same way that I did the first coat. And then I'll let it sit here for about 3 days before use. Question of the day. Let me know down in the comments what grout color you like to use in mosaic flower pots. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help my channel, and subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification so you never miss a single upload, and let me know in the comments if there's something you'd like me to cover in a future video. I'll see you soon. Bye. I'm part of the dry paper towel crew. Whew. Yes. Adding a sealant to your grout will help prevent it from absorbing. Say that 3 times fast. Membrane forming, membrane forming, membrane forming. One moment, please. If you're looking for more Mosaic inspiration, you can check out one of these 2 videos. Until then, see ya.